The next thing I'm going to do is add some CSS to this page. So this is a pretty ugly web page, so I'm going to add some CSS to make it look a bit prettier. But actually, this first step really isn't going to make it look any prettier, but is very necessary. You'll notice that on this page, this piece of text right here is looks a bit different from this piece of text. So this one is bolder, this one is bigger. That's because every web browser has some CSS built right into it. It's called a default style sheet. It's CSS that the browser renders, that the browser makes show up when you don't tell it to do anything else. And the value of this is that if you have some sort of lazy web designer who makes a page without any CSS, their web page still looks okay. You can sort of tell the difference between headline text like this and not headline text. It makes the page look some sort of semblance of presentable. But if you're writing any of your own CSS, then dealing with this can be really annoying. Having all these default stylings and everything. You don't really know or remember, like, okay, so this text is bold. Did I make it bold, or is that just a default style, or what's going on? So whenever I'm making a web page, one of the very first things that I do is actually disable all of the web browser's default styles. There's no just box you can tick to do that. You have to actually write out a way of making the web browser do that. That's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to create my first style sheet. I'm just going to call it styles.css. I could call it anything I want as long as it ends in CSS, but I'll just start with styles. To begin with, I just want to make sure that it's working okay. So I'm going to do something really obvious like give my web page a background color, just to make sure that my CSS is working. Now I'm going to go into the head and I'm going to add in this line. So link rel style sheet. That rel stands for relationship. And it's saying that this file I'm linking in right here, this styles.css, it should behave as a style sheet. If I refresh this page, you can see that it's working. My background color is red. If I change it to blue, now my background color is blue. All right, awesome. I'm going to delete that because it makes my eyes hurt. But at least I know that my style sheet is hooked up properly. Now we're starting to see the difference between the head and the body of a web page. Everything that goes inside the head, you don't actually see on the web page itself. That's everything inside the body. If you type something inside this head tag up here, you're not going to see it on the web page. Instead, the head is it's stuff that somehow affects the web page, somehow adds rules to the web page, but you don't actually see it on the web page itself. So right now there are two things in my head. There's this style sheet right here. You don't actually see styles.css on this page anywhere, but it somehow affects it. The other thing is this title. This title tag defines what shows up here in this little tab, or if I were to create a bookmark of this page, what would show up on the bookmark, or if I go and look at the history of my page, how it shows up here. So that's the title tag, a very important tag that's easy to overlook, but every web page has to have one. It's also extremely important for search engine optimization. If my web page shows up on Google, it's going to show up under whatever I have in this title up here. All right, so now I'm going to make my CSS actually do something. Before I had body, that selects specifically the body tag. If I change this to H1 and do background color red, then it's only going to select and apply this rule I defined right here to the H1 tag right here. If I refresh this page, you can see only this H1 has a red background color. This is called a selector. And a selector, it's what element is selected or elements are selected to have these rules applied to them. You can have multiple rules inside here. For instance, I could say color lime. That will give this H1 a background color of red and a color of lime, a text color of lime. All of these right here, so background color and color, these are called CSS properties. There are over 500 CSS properties. No one expected you to memorize those. You're going to use a handful of them for about 90% of everything that you do. And you can always find lots of references that just list out what all the different properties are. Okay, So that would be if I wanted to change the H1, but I don't actually. What I want to do is select every single element on the page. This star, this is a special selector in CSS that selects literally everything on the page. So if I wanted to, I could do something crazy like transform, rotate 45 degrees, and it would rotate every single thing on the page 45 degrees. I could change this to whatever I want, like 13 degrees, and it would rotate every single thing on the page 13 degrees. Pretty clearly, I don't actually want that. What I do want to do is I want to remove some of the default styling from everything. So the browser gives everything lots of margins, padding, uh, borders. I'm going to get rid of that. We can already see that this has changed from the way it was before. Before, there was all this spacing, and now there's not anymore. And one thing that really drives me crazy is that web browsers like to have this 10 pixel margin around everything on your page. So we're getting rid of that right now. Now let's see, I'm going to work on the fonts. I'm going to say font size inherit, font weight inherit. Font weight is what makes things bold. Font size is exactly what it sounds like. So we can see right now that these guys are the same size. And I'm going to do a couple other things. Font family, this is what font should be used on the page. Text decoration, you use this to make things underlined. Line height, that's so for instance, if you're writing a paper, you might make a double spaced. It's how much space is between the lines. I'll say this is inherit and color is inherit. What inherit means is that each of these things should inherit whatever this property is from the element that it's inside. So for instance, this h1 is inside body. So if I give body a style of, well, I won't do it in here. If I give body a color of red, now every single thing inside the body is going to have a color of red. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. This isn't going to change every single browser styling thing. It's not going to remove all of them, but it will remove most of them. And so these 11 lines of code right here, this is exactly what I use on, again, virtually every web page I make. All of my CSS, it always starts off with this. Okay, so I've removed all of the default styling or most of the default styling from the browser. I'm going to make a commit here. So I'm going to do git add. And now I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to take a shortcut. Before I was doing git add index.html, I would have to do git add styles.css. Having to do git add once for each file is going to get kind of annoying. So you can actually do git add dot. And that selects every single file that's had any changes made to it. And it gets them ready to be part of this snapshot. So I did git add dot. Now we can do git commit m for message. I'll say removed default browser styling, and I'll push that up to GitHub. And I'll also push that up to GitHub page. Actually, nah, you know what? I'll do that later on. I don't need to push every single commit up to GitHub pages, and that's longer than I would want to wait. So I'll just push it up to regular old GitHub for right now. If I go back to GitHub, now I can see that my most recent commit should be removed default browser styling, and I can see that it is from 25 seconds ago.